subject is. Go ahead and run the meeting. Does that make sense?
Well, who are you talking to, or in the sense of running the meeting?
Well,
Who's vice president?
yeah, is Kermit, you run the meeting then. I'm gonna declare and bestow on you the ability to run the meeting. We don't have any action items, and it's very hard to see who's talking and what's going on when you can't visually see it. So that's gonna make the meeting go slower. So Kermit, if you've got the agenda there, why don't you just run the meeting?
All right, we have a quorum, and Joyce, you are taking notes.
I am, of course.
All right, we have a quorum of Kitty and myself and Mr. Cooper and Adolph and Jim Ballinger, Ballringer, excuse me.
Ballringer.
And so that takes care of it. Carlos is signed in, also John Weingold, and Haley is on the meeting also. So call to order, establish quorum, chair report. Steve, do you want to talk about your last visit to the CCSD and any meetings in between?
No, I'm fine. I think we're good. I don't have anything to report.
All right. And did you have your meeting that you were talking about on the
Homeless?
you could
On the
put-
what?
on the homeless situation that you were requested to attend?
Yeah, I did not attend. Stanley and Adolph attended on that, and I think we're just going to discuss that in future agenda items.
All right. So then public comment, any public comment from anybody? We have no public shown up on this, and they've been notified on the board, I guess.
Haley, do you have anybody for public comment?
I have no public comments at this time.
Great.
Okay, facilities and resources supervisor. That means Mr. Carlos Mendoza.
Yeah, I think there was one item that was left off. I think usually there's a report from the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch before me. I don't know if Kitty wants to
Kitty,
comment
excuse
during
me, I'm sorry.
public
That's
comment.
you, okay.
Or maybe she doesn't.
Do you have
We're not
any-
allowed to add things to the agenda, so I think I'll just pass it to you, Carlos.
Okay. Good move, Kitty. Yeah, so a couple of things just to share with the commission that we've been doing since the last meeting. So last month I reported on the fire breaks that we were doing on the Fiscalini Ranch, and we have completed all of the fire breaks on the ranch. We're talking about miles of fire breaks through the entire perimeter of the ranch. It's a huge task every year, but that's been completed. You will notice that in about a month or two, we're going to go back and redo a couple of the fire breaks, more specifically the ones on Huntington, Windsor, and Wedgwood. And I think, sometimes we hear from the community as far as weed abatement that, sometimes it would be nice for people to do it, twice a year because of the growth of the weeds and the grasses. And, a lot of times it's hard for the community to do it. On my end, I like to sort of lead by example and set the tone for that. And so, typically those fire breaks, we do them twice a year just because of the grasses and how they grow and how the weeds come about in those areas. So again, you'll see us doing those fire breaks again in a couple of weeks, if not a month. To this day, we've already treated a couple hundred acres on the ranch for invasive plants. Huge task on both sides of the ranch. We're treating mustard. We're treating Italian bull thistle, all sorts of invasive plants. And obviously, you may ask, well, what's the point of treating invasive plants out on the ranch? And it's part of being good stewards to the land. It's part of managing land to be able to restore those properties or those areas to native habitat. And I was just out this morning walking on the East Ranch and just enjoying the grasses out there and how they've grown. Or a couple of years back, you couldn't see grasses. All you could see is bull thistle, 4 or 5 feet high. Now it's just incredible when you walk out there and you see the grass just floating in the air. So anyways, we've been doing that. Again, it's a huge task. Our volunteers are now back at it with their weeding days on Wednesdays. And they're providing a lot of help down on by the Bluff Trail and the Marine Terrace Trail. They're working down there every Wednesday morning. If you want to join them, come on out. There's a lot of weeds, a lot of invasive plants out there, and they've been getting a lot of good turnout as well on those days. I also reported last month that we received $20,000 from the Slow Fire Safe Council to do tree work on the Fiscalini Ranch for dead and dangerous trees that were behind homes and on trails on the ranch. We are down to 1 day left of that money, and that is going to be this Wednesday. That'll be the last day of that. It's $2,500 a day for a crew to come out and do tree work with us. It's not just me telling the crew what trees to cut. We're actually going out there with the crew because there's so many trees that need attention and there's limited funds. So we are helping the crews out with our own staff, our own equipment to be able to do as many of these trees as possible. Again, I'm proud of what we've done. We really took care of a lot of these dead and dangerous trees. We left a few snags for habitat, and you'll probably see them on the trail system. The other thing I wanted to mention is just Memorial Day on the ranch last week. We had a huge amount of people come to the ranch as we were expecting. We had obviously visitors from out of town walking the trails, but the friends really stepped up. I reached out to them a few weeks before, asked them to help us out with a presence out there, and Kitty organized volunteers to be on the Bluff Trail on the north end, the south end. I think it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and it really helped out to have a presence out there. I think the volunteers also enjoyed it, just having a little bit of interaction out there with the public. And overall, even though we had a lot of people out there, we were prepared for them. The trails were remowed to allow that safe distance throughout the ranch, and everybody behaved pretty well. The last thing I wanted to share with you is just a pretty cool thing that the high school principal and myself have been working on for, I think, about a little over a month now. And so we had a suggestion from a community member on how to honor the high school students that graduated. And one of the ideas was to put up some flags on the street lights. And him and I worked on it for, like I said, over a month, try to figure out, how we can put those flags up and where to get them. So I provided all that information to him. He was able to get the funding for the flags. They purchased the flags. We have a policy, a flag policy, and we also have insurance that we require. And anyways, I at that point, what I did is I offered the high school principal, I said, we're going to make it easy. Just give me the flags and I'll put them up. We don't have to go through the policy or us charging you to put them up. It's the right thing to do. So last week we received 16 flags, double-sided. There's one student on one side and another student on the other. We put 16 flags up last week. Yesterday we received 5 more, so a total of 21 flags on the street light. So those are up now. If you go downtown, you'll see them. There's a flag of each student that's graduating, and the plan is to leave those flags up probably for about a month. So we were hoping to have them mid-May, but they were delayed shipping, and so they're a little late. So we're going to have them for the rest of the month. After that, we'll take them down, and the plan is for the principal to put them in storage. Obviously, it's kind of hard to give them out to a student when they're double-sided, right? So what he's going to do, what the plan is for, is to store those, and then in a 10-year anniversary, they're going to bring them out and show them to the students when we come back. And we've gotten a lot of good positive responses out of it, so much so that the principal, after we put them up, he said, "Hey, we ought to do this every year." So anyways, we're talking about that. But anyways, it's a cool thing. If you drive down, you'll see the flags, and he's planning on having sort of a parade at some point in the next week or two with all the students and their parents and anybody that wants to join along, to go down Main Street and just look at the flags, probably make 2 loops out of it. So anyways, that's my report, unless you have any questions.
That was great, Carlos.
Very good. So there are 42 graduates.
Yeah, Carlos, that flag thing is pretty cool. But on the fire break, do they plant the trees back in the fire break? Or is that left pretty much not the young seedlings not coming up, or are coming up? Which is it?
So there's different treatments for different fire breaks. Obviously, Huntington and Windsor, it's all grass. So those are basically mowed with tractors. The ones that you're probably referring to, Trenton, Tipton, Warren, those are through the forest. So those are done by hand with weed whackers. And before the work is done, the crew goes out, assesses where the plants are, what is going to be left. They leave all the oaks, they leave all the native plants there. Basically what they're cutting down is poison oak and grasses, just to cut the fire issue down. But to your point, the trees are left alone.
Well, the fuel breaks look pretty good, especially that area on the north side, I believe, south side. And I was just wondering if we were just planting more trees back in an area that we've, cleared out pretty successfully. It looks like, frankly, it looks like a good spacing. 25 to 35 foot per tree is kind of what it's ended up like. And if we plant among them with the younger seedlings, we're going to lose the value of the fuel break. Is that happening, or what? I don't remember seeing small trees out there, but I didn't look either. And I was just curious if we have a policy of where not to plant seedlings to keep it a fire break.
Yeah, so every year we have a tree planting party group on the ranch. The Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch, spearhead that. They have the seeds, they do the planting, they do all the work to grow the plants, or the trees, I'm sorry. And then we pick a site appropriate where we're gonna replant those trees. And you'll probably see in a few areas where we have these smaller trees. As far as the areas with fire breaks, we haven't really gone back there to replant those. For a couple reasons. One is obviously when you plant a tree next to a home and that tree grows, then it becomes an issue with the neighbor, whether it falls or not. Yeah. So it might be one of those discussions that we have this winter and we'll see. We're trying to get a little more guidance as far as how to plant and where to plant. Whether the soil is good in one area or not, how we're going to plant them, how we're going to not spread disease when we plant them. So those are all, topics of discussion with the friends. And I think, we're learning by doing and by our mistakes as well. So.
Carlos, I just want to say that, of course, you're doing a fantastic job, but a small comment on the flags. The Lions are still considering whether they're going to have a parade in September, and they were going to use that opportunity to honor the graduates and have them in the parade. Perhaps a reuse of those flags would be if they were to be in the parade. And the other issue is, though, that a lot of the kids are going to be gone. They're going to be back to school and not even available in September. So I just wanted to throw that in there, that one of the things is to honor the graduates in Pine Dorado Parade if we have it. And probably will have the parade, nothing else but the parade.
Yeah, it's good information, Jim. Thanks for the heads up.
Steve, why don't you unmute yourself and take over.
Keep going. You're doing good. I'm here. If I need to get in, I'll get in.
But you're in.
Well, I got in on my iPad.
Okay. All right.
I downloaded the app and then Haley did something. And so, there you go. All right. So yeah, keep going. I'm not even on my agenda right now.
Well, the agenda is pretty slim.
Yeah, it is.
I think we
basically, it's the public comment facilities and resource supervisor.
There you go.
Finished.
So
And
do we
then
need to
have
get,
the consent agenda? We have not approved last week's minutes yet.
all right, then somebody making a motion to approve the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes.
That was Stan?
A second.
Second.
10 seconds. Joyce, you got that? All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay,
second.
perfect. So now we're moving on to future agenda.
Wait.
Oh, go ahead, Joyce.
Who was the second on the minutes?
I'll be second.
Oh, okay.
Everyone was. There was two of the three of us.
Okay. All right.
3 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're on to future agenda items, which will basically be a discussion. And we're going to talk about the homeless thing here for a minute. But first, I just wanted to touch on the skate park and the soccer field. So it's still there. It's not going away. I still want to keep a discussion alive, but just because funding is going to be such a critical piece of moving forward for the CCSD itself, we just need to put that on the back burner still. And I
You're talking
think
about the
that
toilet.
I think the prevalence, if that's the right word, of this next topic is gonna, also be a consumption of funds. So other than that, I say let's talk about the homeless thing. Stan and Adolph, what do you got for us?
You want to go first, Adolph?
Want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah, do.
Kind of attended the meeting in Zoom, and there were 3 or 4 folks there who were involved in the homeless problems. And the first bullet I had was they want pros to be involved to develop an approach to the homeless camps. And then it kind of diverged from there a bit, where they start talking about how they would basically be approaching the homeless problem, and both in terms of shelters, I suppose, the talk about what would be needed for them in the community in terms of if they had camps, be water, porta potties, dumpsters, etc. And then they talked about a group of volunteers, I guess, who would make contact with the homeless folks. And they had a lot of different ideas there going, including mobile trailers, sleeping quarters, and so forth and so on. And I guess these were portable little guys that they would move on to an area that would provide a bathroom, I guess it would be provide a bedroom, maybe in a kitchen, that'd be it. And, but the bottom line appeared to me, and Stan can probably elaborate a bit, was that what they wanted PROS to do was to be the organization basically that held the budget. Since PROS is the only organization that has a budget, they would basically put that budget money for the homeless folks into the PROS situation, and supposedly we would then disseminate that money according to whatever supposedly was decided on. And what they were looking at is apparently Gavin Newsom had put together a fund, I guess, for the homeless. And supposedly there was up to maybe $500,000 for communities or whatever. And you had to apply for that. And the application, though, has to go through an organization that is going to manage the funds. And that's where they wanted PROS to get involved, I suppose, with some assistance from them to write this grant that is required in order to receive that money. So basically, it looks to me like what they really wanted us to do is be a funnel organization for them with our involvement concerning where the homeless camps are in the community. So PROS would basically supposedly make that survey of where all these homeless camps are, and then they would come in and, you know, the money would be dispersed according to the, and they called it an ad hoc committee, by the way. That ad hoc committee then would have decided, okay, how they're going to approach it. And Stan, you can go ahead and put your thoughts in.
Okay. One of the things when I looked at what was being proposed, one of the things was to take all the homeless people's personal belongings and move them to a storage facility down on Prado Road. So really, there was, I think the real focus of it was how do we get rid of these guys? And then what it appeared to me that they wanted was for us to form this committee that would survey the population and, you know, like male, female, age, name, et cetera, and to come up with I think they actually kind of wanted us to make an action plan, because if we were going to write a grant to the governor, to the special money, which Adolf, I think was 500 million. I don't think 500,000 bucks for homelessness in California.
No, it was up to $500 per grantee.
Yeah. So at any rate, I had a really creepy feeling about the meeting, actually. And I know we have this problem, but compared to other cities in the country, it's like nothing. I mean, I personally don't like the idea that there are people that could catch the forest on fire. You know, that threatens us all. Around the corner from me, and I know Carlos is aware of this, there's an encampment on some private property. People living in cars, people living in tents and stuff. And while it kind of bothers me that it's so close to my house, and the guy who lets them be there is kind of a sketchy dude, if you know what I mean. He's actually offering, you know, shelter to people that don't have any. And so I don't know. It just seemed to me that what some of the people wanted with at the CCSD was us to be the fall guy. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's just my interpretation. I don't want to give these guys the bum's rush. The problem is so big, and I didn't hear any discussion at that meeting about solutions. Not really. Just more move them down the road.
I think excuse me, Stan, I think what they were looking at is the fact that PROS is the quote budget organization, and they don't really want us in there. And what they really want us to do is be that funnel for making that grant official process. And so it's not as if we're going to solve the homeless problem, because we mentioned that PROS is not an organization that has this huge staff that can go out and do all of the stuff that they're requiring. And even though we have budget, that budget money that's not really going to go to us to do the kinds of things we'd like to do, but it's going to be the filter basically where it's going to pass through us and out to them. And I guess the problem they seem to have is they don't have an organizational structure where there is, other than the CCSD budget, I guess, a way of getting that money per the grants requirements. So that
Maybe they should solve that.
So that's
Maybe they should create a grant committee.
So I could,
Who is they?
Yeah.
okay.
Well, yeah.
They
They.
several names there, but I can't recall the person who called the meeting. And maybe Haley or someone has those names.
Not that I don't want to prolong a discussion about homelessness in America, but I was kind of curious as to John's position on it, because as a committee or commission, we kind of follow in the guidance of the big board. I'm not sure what the policy committee's thing is, but John, is this something that you're thinking the board would like us to pursue? I hope not.
Steve, you're ahead of me. I was going to simply make a point of order that really I don't think you should be tasked by another committee, rather than you should be tasked by the board. So the policy committee technically should go back to the board with a recommendation, and then the board then tasks somebody else, decides, one, if there's something to do about it, and two, if they're going to task somebody, it comes from the PROS committee would be tasked by the board, not another committee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So my question is, they is the board, CCSD board, somebody or a policy committee from CCSD board? I'm still unclear who they are.
The meeting was actually called by the policy committee.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. 4 or 5 members.
All right, thank you. That helps clarify.
Sorry.
I can add a couple of just background information as far as where the policy came from. So I think it was about a year and a half ago, our legal counsel and I basically collaborated on a policy for removal of homeless encampments on CCSD property, including the Fiscalini Ranch. At that point, we had, somewhere in the 50, 60 encampments that we needed to clean up, and we needed to do it the legal way. So we came up with a policy that was based on, law and, procedures and what, the law requires of the CSD, being that it's a public space. That policy or procedure was then looked at by our board, and our board decided to take it to the policy committee for them to review it and then give them a recommendation as to, whether they needed to make some changes on it. The policy committee looked at the first page, which is basically the introduction, and tasked a subcommittee to basically humanize it a little more, make it not as heavy-handed. I had a meeting with 2 of the subcommittee members about the policy, and I shared a couple of concerns after I read what their revisions were. One is that I think, we need to keep in mind that a lot of the homeless aren't just on CCSD properties. So there are a lot of homeless on Caltrans right away, on state parks. There's a lot of homeless on Main Street, in businesses. Sure, we have an issue, but how far does the CCSD want to take the responsibility of the homeless? It almost seemed to me like the policy committee wanted to task pros with looking at all of the homeless in town. Well, that's a huge task. For me, I was just looking for a policy to be able to clean homeless encampments and remove the fire danger and the hazards there. So those are two issues. The policy as well also, as I think somebody mentioned, I think it was either Adolph or Stan, about, staffing. I mean, when you look at the policy and writing grants and going out and, identifying where these homeless are, I don't know that that's CCSD's job. I think that's more of a county job.
Amen.
Where the county needs to come in and step in. Mental health, sheriff, they have the resources, they have the funds, they have the know-how to do it. On our end, we're looking at Parks and Rec. We're looking at how do we clean our parks, not how do we go beyond that and do mental health and all this stuff. So those are just that was my comments to them.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you, Carlos. That helps.
Yeah, and I agree that the CCSD doesn't have land use, and there's so many people. If somebody wants to put a Cambria focus on the homeless and put a grant app out, we have so many people that can do it. There's churches, there's Cambria Community Council, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it's a CCSD responsibility at all.
Yeah. There was one interesting comment that someone on the committee made, the policy committee. It was kind of interesting because what they said was there's some survey that the migratory homeless just love to come to Cambria for a couple of reasons. One is we don't have a police force out there all the time, and we have open space that appears to be available to them.
Can I respond to that? There was one of the people was talking about an article that was in a publication that refers to rubber tramps. And I don't know if you guys know what that term is, but along the Pacific coast, there have been people living in school buses and old bread trucks and stuff like that for a long time, since probably even before the 60s. And so these rubber tramps are people that just move from place to place, and they find a place that they can pull out and live for a while, and then they move on. And so somehow this woman said that there was a survey that showed that Cambria was the #1 place on the Pacific coast recommended to rubber tramps to come and park up a side road and come, because there wasn't any enforcement. And so I think she was using that to say, we need enforcement. And my feeling at that meeting is that's what they wanted. They wanted enforcement. They wanted to be able to somehow move people on. And I made the comment at that time that my wife used to work for mental health in Nevada. And she was on the crises hotline. And the policy in Nevada for homeless people at that time was to buy them a bus ticket to Sacramento. Pretty cheap way to solve the problem, but it doesn't solve the problem. I don't know. I was pretty disheartened after that meeting. And I agree with Jim that I don't think that it's our responsibility to deal with this.
Well, my comment would be if they ever wanted for us to do it, there's got to be another staff added to the whole thing to manage the army of volunteers that's going to be employed to handle all this. And frankly, that would be the first grant for it, is to write for a staff member and arm up on that way. But I guess somebody just handed us a giant monkey to consider and say, take this from me. And I'm not sure that monkey needs to be there. I'm agreeing with Carlos. That's, the county has the resources on this. They have the enforcement. We're an unincorporated area. We don't have to take that on. And it's just, if we have a problem, I think we go to the county. I think, John, am I right on that? That's the.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so anyway, that was one. Do you want to push this any further, Steve, or should we go to another future agenda item?
Yeah, I would say no. Let's go to another future agenda item. Unless
Okay,
somebody thinks, yeah.
I was going to suggest I'd like to hear a little more about where next meeting, where the public right-of-way is on that gate on
That's
Piney
a good
Way.
one.
They've got a automatic gate on there now with a keypad. It's a pretty nice one. They put money into it. But if we don't push this thing within a year, I know we're not going to have any access to it. So that's my only concern is we move within a year to get that thing out of there, or like an agreement of some kind. But we're pretty weak on it because I sent the map out, but basically we have the right of way, in my opinion, all the way down to private land where it goes onto private land, but that private land does block access to the lot below. So it can't be exclusive. There's got to be some kind of a record on that easement. They have lots down there that edge that right of way, that the lots aren't owned by that ownership at the bottom. So they are changing the pattern of the area. I don't know if that means zip or not. Anyway, that's my thought.
Yeah, I think that's a good item to add. Unfortunately, I've been a little overwhelmed with the amount of work the last couple of months to really dig into the paperwork. I did do a little work on the EIR and the plan for the park, and I see the emergency road is mentioned there multiple times on that document. So I'm sure that at that point, when the ranch manager, Ben Bohr, was around, and Connie Davison and the fire chief and the sewer supervisor, I'm sure they had a discussion, and they must have all saw some document that verified that we had access to that. And so that's why you see that emergency road mentioned time after time on the EIR in the document. I had Ray, our utilities manager. I think he was on Zoom last month, just giving you guys an update on that. So there are maps that show the sewer system. We just need to dig into where the legal document is for that sewer easement. We're not quite there yet as far as finding that. So anyways, that's just a little update on that.
And did anybody check with fire? That's where I'm kind of curious about. Does the fire chief have the ability to get down that road? And does he even know who to call for the key?
So I think
John?
the fire chief.
Carlos, yeah.
So the fire chief is aware of that. I filled him in. I haven't had a discussion yet with him as far as how he's got, how the access is down there. The same issue is with utilities. I mean, they need to be able to go through that and service the manholes and all that. But as far as that, Ray mentioned, you'll talk to, if on their end, all they need is a key or a keypad number for them to be able to access. The issue on our end is public access and,
Yeah.
and the public being able to get in and out.
Well,
Again,
I'm just would be happy to start the discussion of, okay, at least you got the key and you know who built the fence. We don't even have the guy's name yet.
Yeah, I don't either. I can't remember the neighbor just told me. The biggest issue one of the neighbors has is that's still, he's worried about fire at the bottom of the road or at the road started by something and working uphill. The fire trucks have to get in down there. There's no turnaround space. It's a one-way road because there's no place for a big truck. They wouldn't send a big truck down there. Better not, because it would just be trapped. But that's the issue, is you can't turn around. You've got to have that clear access all the way from the park up to the top of the hill before you can turn around. So there is a machine operation aspect. And there are open lots down there that they trap houses above it. All those lots are unbuildable, I'm sure. I don't even know who owns them. But yes, that's all I've got to say. The guy who owns the house, seems his name is Rainey or something like that, has tried to contact the fire chief and given him the code. The fire chief has not. The fire department won't return his call because they probably haven't ironed out what they're going to do about it yet. So I think it's kind of a hanging issue among everybody.
All right, well, there's a future agenda item for us.
Steve, I don't want to throw a monkey wrench in anything, but I think at one time John was in favor of forming a nonprofit that could accept monies to do things like, do active activities on the East Ranch. Is that going anywhere? Is there somebody should make an application? And John, I don't even know if John's still in favor of it or it's really a busy time and we shouldn't. So.
Yeah, Steve, Jim, in answer to your question, we're still interested in doing that. Honestly, most of the government offices are closed or on irregular hours. So a lot has slowed down for us in that area of trying to get things through bureaucracies right now. That's and then we're pretty swamped with all the financials this time of year. So it's not off the radar. It's just right behind more pressing issues.
Yeah, well, let's put it on a future agenda, maybe in the end of the summer or fall.
Yeah, not that I want to be negative Nelly on that, but now I'm just like, dude, all the loose funds for that kind of stuff are going to be sucked up by existing needs that are going to be in, dire straits. So I'm just like, on that.
Okay.
But nonetheless, we still need to put a new roof on the Vets Hall.
Just one thing that I read a couple of days ago, reason, in that a lot of communities who are in the situation we are, where people visit, they use our beaches, they use our parks, etc., are looking for ways in which they can actually get income coming in to take care of that. Which sounds to me, if there were a movement like that it's through the political process, possibly they could have something where they could, I'll call it a tax for not any other reason, for those who visit these areas to contribute to the upkeep of these areas.
Yeah.
And that could be a reasonable source of funds if we had it.
But yes, Jim, we're going to put that on the future agenda items. It's not far from my mind because I think that's really the way we're going to eventually have to fund some of this stuff if we don't, form a tax, thing.
Steve, I can report that another not-for-profit has accepted a donation for 150 new chairs for the Vets Hall.
Oh.
We're going to be getting that this summer.
Cool.
Well, there you go. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
With padded seats.
Awesome. Are they getting
Well, I'll
rid of
start
some?
attending.
Carlos, will you be getting rid of old chairs or just putting more over in the side room?
I haven't discussed it with people that are donating. I think John's more involved in that.
To be determined, Steve.
All right.
You don't want padded seats. People will sit there too long.
Ah,
Yeah, that's what 5 hour set.
The idea is to strategically use the padded seats for certain events.
Okay.
all right, anybody got anything else they want to talk about?
Steve, I do have one item
Go ahead.
regarding the skate park. I know it's unrelated to the agenda, but perhaps for future consideration. A student who is currently going into 10th grade at Coast Union High School called me on behalf of he and his friends that they are very interested in rebuilding the skate park, as it was once before, or some variation. So I just throw that out for one data point, that's all.
Should that be on the next, should that be on the agenda next time then?
I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah, John, are you in touch with the young man?
I have his phone number.
Yeah, anytime they want, not that I want to put it on the agenda necessarily, because there's no action we can take on it. But I really encourage the kids, if they want to come and make a presentation, I want to listen to it.
Okay. One other additional item unrelated to future agendas, but what kind of related, and that is the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday will be taking up the Pros Commission budget. So perhaps somebody might want to be there listening to that. Because we do have some funds available, we're talking about similar requests there.
Well, okay.
Would this be what, Steve, you know where we're headed on the budget thing. Is this where we should be looking at that $20,000 grant to build the toilet?
Yeah, I don't.
But
John, have you heard anything on that, or did that get lost in the COVID shutdown too?
No, that's one of the items to discuss.
Okay. Oh, why? Did it come through?
Well, it's
No.
it's up for discussion on the agenda,
On the Finance Committee.
on the Finance Committee, correct?
Well, what would they be discussing?
Whether to put it on your budget or cut I think we've got, Carlos might want to help me out. I think we included 10 or 20,000 in there for the restroom continuation project.
Okay, but
Yeah.
that's not the 20 grand I applied for in San Luis from the county, from the Board of
Oh,
Supervisors.
no. This is CCSD budget. only.
Okay.
Yeah, so so every year, the finance manager asks me
Yeah.
to do two budgets, one facilities and resources, one for the pros. The budget for pros is about $21,000 for next year. That's what is being proposed. There's 17,000 for design, consulting for the restrooms on the East Ranch. There's $3,000 proposed for a grant writer, and there's about $1,000 proposed for trail map printing for the ranch.
And when is that meeting, John, again?
That's Thursday at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Hey, Steve,
Yes, go ahead, Kitty.
I was in contact with the people at the county and that program, the beautification grants.
Uh-huh.
They're still going forward with it. I
Okay.
thought they might just claw back the money, but,
Yeah, I did too.
or, yeah. But they haven't made any decisions.
Well, if we have to wrestle for it, just let me know. I'll send Adolf.
I wrestled in high school, but that's like 7.
All right, John, anything else? Anybody got anything else?
Nope, I'm off to a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, right on. Hey, thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
See you guys.
okay.
Bye-bye.